You are now on the road beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. Glad to have you with us. Welcome back, Facebook Live. Ike Mcfadden, my co-host, joining me from the hills of Tennessee. Ike, what's happening?
Not much. I'm curious to hear what we're going to be going on about tonight. Why don't you intro the topic, then I'll ask a question.
Yeah, I'm dying to hear what that question's going to be. Okay, so the last show we talked about urban legends. Tonight, we're going to focus on the black-eyed children phenomena. You know, now we talked a bit about this, and there's this reoccurring story you keep hearing of kids showing up on your doorstep. They range between the ages, I believe, of 8 to 16. You can't see their eyes. They've all got black eyes inside their eyes, and they always want to get in your house. And I'm hearing, Ike, if you let them in your house, bad things happen.
Well, certainly in your case, I believe that would be true, but is this? I remember you remember that movie? Gosh, it was back in the '90s or something. It was the Village of the Damned or something, where it had these kind of. Is that related to this at all, or is this? Am I totally off in the woods on this?
You could be off in the woods, but I know our guest tonight's going to break things down. Our guest is going to be talking about the legend of the black-eyed children and more.
That is true. We have with us Alex Matsuo. She's a paranormal researcher, singer, which is unusual, and author. She's the founder of the Association of Paranormal Study and runs the blog and YouTube channel, The Spooky Stuff. If it's weird, spooky, unusual, scary, macabre, haunted, she wants to write and talk about it. Alex has been on the Travel Channel's Most Terrifying Places in America and is the host of the Spooky Stuff podcast. She has also been featured in news reports on Fox News and The Washington Post.
Alex has written a few books. She also holds a master's in theater from San Diego State University and currently resides in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution through her ancestor, Joseph Toller. Please welcome Alex to the show. Alex Matsuo, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
We are good. I want to ask you off the top, tell us, who is Joseph Toller and what was his connection to the Revolutionary War?
Yeah, so Joseph Toller, he lived in Virginia and he was a patriot during the American Revolution. I'm actually still trying to learn about him. I actually didn't even know, I was related to him. So when I was trying to join the DAR, I had another ancestor that I was trying to join with, but we couldn't get quite, they couldn't confirm the connection, because you have broken marriages, illegitimate children, and that sort of thing. And then the genealogist for the Daughters of the American Revolution, she was like, I did find this one person and he is related to you. And so I was like, okay, great. There's not a lot that we know about him. I got the impression that he was a farmer, and, recruited to join the Patriots and for American independence.
That's incredible. That's very interesting. This is a bit of an aside, but you mentioned the DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution. My grandmother was a member of that, and as a youngster, I got something like the DAR Good Citizenship Award, believe it or not.
Nice.
And I have often thought, and you mentioned genealogy, my grandmother was always into that, so was my mother, and I grew up in the summers going to cemeteries to try to track down some gravestone. And I think that kind of gave me an appreciation for, a personal appreciation for history. Did that have a similar effect on you?
Yeah, I didn't really get into history until maybe my final year of graduate school. And it was because I was trying to adapt Shakespeare's The Tempest into 1800s Hawaii, which would have been when my great-grandfather had immigrated from Japan to Hawaii. And I'm like, oh, that would be a great subject for, The Tempest and everything. And then I started to take this deep dive into history and my family history specifically, because I didn't know a lot about my grandfather at the time. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed into this, oh, wow, there's a lot of holes in my family history. And then I've been trying to fill them ever since. And that has taken me down the genealogy path. And I've actually integrated genealogy into my paranormal research too, especially when researching haunted places.
Wow. We want to talk about the black-eyed children first up. I kind of threw together my little explanation at the top of the show. Maybe you can break it down for us. First, what are they?
We don't know yet. So there's a lot of theories out there. Some people think that they're aliens. Some people have tossed them up to be demons or inhuman spirits or trickster spirits. Some have even gone as far to hypothesize that they're alien-human hybrids. Like maybe they came from us, when you have all these abduction stories. Someone, I don't remember the name, but someone has been doing research on black-eyed children sightings and UFO sightings to see if there's any correlation between the two. And I think they have found correlations that there seems to be a connection between there's a lot of UFO sightings here, and then 10 years later, there are black-eyed children sightings. So David Weatherly might have been the one to have done that. But yeah, it's definitely one of those things where we don't know. And it seems like the people who encounter black-eyed children at the moment don't really think about, hey, take a seat, I have some questions, But also black-eyed children are my hard no. Like, I don't want to run into a black-eyed child. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, you can come in if you tell me what you are. I don't know.
Well, regarding the black-eyed children, historically, is this an American phenomenon? Is it relatively recent? Does this have some kind of history that goes back elsewhere? What do you know about the background of this, if anything?
So the first story that really like gained traction was Brian Bethel's story. And this was a story that he had posted on a message board in 1998. And his account was he was at the mall parking lot late at night. He was dropping off a check to one of the furniture stores. I think it was a furniture store. Either way, 1998, you dropped off checks. You didn't pay online. And there was a movie theater right next to him. And these two boys came up to him asking him if they could drive him home to their house so that they could get money and all these things. And he was really freaked out about it. His fight or flight instincts kicked in, and the boys kept looking at him. And when he looked at them, he saw that they had black eyes. The boys kept saying they just wanted to watch a movie, but the movie that they were wanting to watch was almost over, and it was the last showing of the night. So sketch. And so he ended up driving away. And that was the story that made people say, oh, I've seen that too. So there may have been earlier encounters with black-eyed children, but Brian Bethel seemed to be the one that started it all. So we're talking 1998. There are a few accounts that came out after that of, they've been seen like during Mothman sightings, which that just goes down a whole other rabbit hole because you got the Men in Black and everything. So it's one of those things that it's really hard to track down and know for sure, because of Brian Bethel's story. Like, do we really know if those stories are legitimate? So
well, I know there's some commonalities amongst these stories. First off, the kids all have black eyes. And we're talking, if you're wondering, are their eyes black around it? No, we're talking the eye themselves, the pupils, the whole eyeball is black. That's what we're talking here. I hear they have black eyes. They're between the ages of like 8 and maybe 16. I've heard some reports that they smell, that they have tattered clothing, and they always want to get something out of you, like get in your house or want you to let them in. Are those commonalities you've been hearing as well?
Yeah, I've heard of those. There also there's also one where they wear outdated clothing.
Okay.
Or they're trying to fit in, or their clothes seem handmade, which is interesting. Like they'll wear like a Nike sweatshirt, but it looks like someone made it. So almost like they're trying too hard to fit in, that type of thing. The smell I have heard of. That's probably the biggest one. Between the ages of like 6 and 16. I've also heard as old as like 17 or 18. Yeah. And they do want inside your space. So it could be your car, it could be your tent while you're camping. It could be it could be your military barrack. It's your space that they want in.
So I'm sort of usually the skeptic on the show. Is there any kind of documentation of this? Are there photographs? Is there any kind of evidence? Or are we simply going on word of mouth and stories? Or what makes, answer that, and then tell us, what makes you feel that these things are fairly certain?
So so no one has been able to take a picture of them. Any sort of documentation, it's scarce. It's very scarce. I haven't seen anything like legit, like a police report yet. What I have read are medical records, though, of folks who have let them in, and then something weird happens. Like they come down with a really rare form of cancer. Like there was a couple who had let a black-eyed child in, and then the husband ended up developing this really rare skin cancer that you can only get from a tanning bed. But he'd never been to a tanning salon before. So, which is, I think that more indicates like some sort of radiation after effect there. So I'm on the fence about the legitimacy of black-eyed children. So I'm kind of a skeptic as well, because although I do understand, like in the manner in which they appear, it'd be hard to call the cops, especially if it does trigger your fight or flight instincts. You start to feel like you're being drained. And by the time the cops arrive anyway, the kids are probably going to be gone. So
yeah, but wouldn't you at least get like, I don't know, some, footprints or, something of some sort left behind?
Yeah, that's a good point. So now if I had a black-eyed child appearing to me now, there's concrete everywhere.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have footprints. Now the story that I read of the guy who was camping, I guess if he had went back to the site to find the footprints, that might be a thing. But from my understanding, with the guy in particular who was camping, he was trying to get out as fast as he could. So it's like he didn't even get a chance to, take impressions of footprints and stuff. So, and then the other story that I read, which conveniently took place in Raleigh, about 20 minutes away from me, that was in a mall parking lot. So, that one, I was like, ooh, that's a little too close to home. So, yeah.
Alex, we had a guest on our last episode. We talked briefly about black-eyed children. I've also mentioned this to other guests before. My theory is you've got black-eyed children, Slender Man, shadow people, men in black. My theory was, could this be the same entity that's presenting itself to people in different forms?
It's possible. That goes into the trickster spirit theory that it could be the same thing and people are just interpreting it differently. I mean, if you watch a car accident and there's like 5 other witnesses, all 5 of those people are going to have a different version of that story based on their experience. So I wouldn't be surprised.
So let's change topics a little bit here. We were talking before we went live about the new movie, The Conjuring, number 3. The Devil Made Me Do It, I believe.
Yep.
Which I saw not too long ago, legally. And what do you know the background behind that? It's a relatively famous couple. I forget their names. Is there a lot behind that story, or is that pure Hollywood?
Oh boy. Okay. Yes. So I do know a lot about the backstory. I did a YouTube video about it. I've done quite a bit of research on it. So the couple in question is Ed and Lorraine Warren. Yeah. They don't have the greatest reputation within the paranormal community. They were pioneers of their time. A lot of the reason why we have the paranormal community that we have today is because of the Warrens. So I definitely don't want to make it seem like I'm discounting their contributions. But so with The Devil Made Me Do It, it's basically, I can tell you everything that was not true in the movie. Majority of it was very over dramatized and made up for Hollywood. There was no Disciples of the Ram. There was no cult. There was no curse. Arnie Johnson was not even allowed to use the possession defense. His lawyer tried to plea him not guilty by reason of demonic possession, and his lawyer, the judge said absolutely not. So then the lawyer switched it to a self-defense, not guilty by reasons of self-defense. So that didn't even, that wasn't even a thing. Also, Arnie was not alone when in the movie, his name is Bruno Sauls, but his landlord's real name was Alan Bono. Arnie was not alone. And there's a few different questions about how the altercation happened. There's one account that Arnie and Alan Bono were fighting over his fiancee, Debbie Glatzel. They were already engaged at the time that this happened too. So there wasn't like an engagement thing of like, ooh, it was already a thing. Arnie's cousin and Arnie's little sister were also present. There was another version of the story where Alan Bono had grabbed his sister's arm and wouldn't let him go. It also happened outside. So, and then Debbie had actually said something to her dad as Arnie was being arrested, saying, "Daddy, you know how Arnie gets when he's drinking." So...
Okay, so it doesn't sound like much of any of that is accurate. Is there any part of it that's accurate?
It sounded like maybe 5% of the movie was accurate from what you're telling us.
I would say, 5% is safe. Arnie's name is right. Debbie's name is right. Her little brother was believed to have been possessed by demons. By 63 demons, I think was the official number. But David Glatzel and his brother Carl Jr., they actually sued the Warrens when there was a book about the situation too that was published. And they claimed that the Warrens basically exploited them and took advantage of them. And also the Warrens apparently told the Glatzel family that if they went along with the story, they would be promised a substantial amount of money. The Warrens made millions from the Devil Made Me Do It case because of the book written by Gerald Brittle. The Glatzels only got about $2,000.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Wow.
Okay, well, it's still it's a good movie.
It wasn't my favorite of the Conjuring movies, but yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you next. The Conjuring movies all seem to be based on a true story, and that's a pretty bold statement when you say that. Because the true story could just be somebody's name that's being used for the film, but the rest of it could be, just made up by Hollywood. Are there any other things in any of the Conjuring series that bear some truth beyond this movie?
I would say if we were to pick which of the Conjuring movies was the most accurate, I would say the very first one. On the very first movie. Now, there were a lot of changes made, like Bathsheba wasn't really like a witch, that kind of thing. The Conjuring 2, there's a lot of controversy surrounding The Conjuring 2 with the Enfield poltergeist because the Society of Psychical Research was the main team that worked on that case. And apparently Ed and Lorraine Warren were only there for maybe 15 minutes. And Ed had pulled aside Maurice Gross, who is one of the folks from SPR, and he said, "Hey, we can make a lot of money from this case." So now there's some people that say that didn't happen, but if you read a book called This House is Haunted by Guy Lyon Playfair, the Warrens aren't mentioned. They're not mentioned at all. Now, is there a chance that Guy Lyon Playfair omitted the Warrens from the book? Possibly. But when you read the notes from SPR and stuff, there's really no mention of them at all. So that one's another one. There is a demon named Valak in the Lesser Key of Solomon, but as far as the Enfield poltergeist, no. I do enjoy the Annabelle movies, but all of the backstory with Annabelle and everything is fabricated. That's all fabricated. Are you saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're saying the Hollywood stuff may not be totally, we can't? Yeah, I would say there was a lot of embellishment and additions made by Hollywood.
Well, realistically, it's hard to believe, but they've made 7 movies tied to this, the Warrens. I think even The Nun was an offshoot of the Conjuring series.
Yep.
Incredible.
Yep, which again, that's all fabricated. And like the demon that is the nun, Valak isn't a nun at all. Valak is like this little cherub that's like the general of the army of hell,
That's a hell of a title there,
Yeah, I know, right? And he's a little baby cherub angel, he's
I think we need to put that as your identifier on the next super we have for you. Ike, general of hell /cherub. How about that?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that at all. That's
okay. All right. Good deal. Alex, fascinating talking with you. We'd love to get you back on the show. Where can people find you on the web? We've talked about your blog, and folks, check out her YouTube videos, some incredible stuff, especially the one on The Conjuring 3. Where can people find you?
Yeah, people can find me at thespookystuff.com. I'm at the same handle on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. So I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Alex, thank you for being here on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Ike, I know it's hard for you to believe, but you know, stuff in Hollywood isn't always true.
Are we ready to talk about strange stuff in the news at the moment?
You just want to change the subject. All right.
I'm feeling disheartened because I had put a lot of stock in all the Conjuring movies. And to hear this, I'm going to have to get a new career, I guess.
I know. But what the biggest, most impressive thing about The Conjuring is they've stretched this story out for 7 movies.
Well, to be fair,
that's impressive.
I think they are good movies. Who's that? Patrick Wilson, and who's the female actress?
I don't know who the female actress is, but they've been in, maybe
Vera Parmigiani something, Vera something. Anyway,
something like that. Yeah, but they're decent movies. 7 of them. Somebody keeps going. I know I went to see them a few weeks ago. So there you go. Conjuring 3. All right, folks. Ike, you ready to get to the news?
I am. I've got the one thing that crossed my radar since last we spoke. As everyone probably knows, who has nothing better to do. We're coming up on the big release, allegedly, of the UFO, UAP, mental health issue problems in the public document that's coming out in the news. And, I was thinking about this. Of course, I've been skeptical of this. I don't think anything's going to come out, but I continue. The part that does interest me is, why is it of such interest at the moment? And then I thought about it, and historically, we go through, they're called UFO flaps, which means not necessarily historically that there are more UFOs in the sky, but that goes through a period of people being more interested. The media is more interested. We've seen this in the late 40s. We saw it in the 60s. That's my best guess about, this is some kind of deep psychological problem that the U.S. is going through or something. Are you really expecting something big out of this or no?
No, not really. No, I'm expecting to see a report with a lot of blacked out areas that you can't read. I'm expecting them to try to tie it to drones. You'll hear the word drone being used a lot, and possibly technology that's here on Earth already. As we've talked about before in the show, I would think that what we've seen with these videos, the Tic Tac videos and the craft that's been seen out there, I do believe this technology is here on Earth. I believe it's coming from somewhere, whether it's interdimensional or something that's always out there. There are things in the sky that's up there that we don't know where the hell they're coming from, and neither does the government. That's the reality of the situation. Is anyone going to come clean about it? Maybe, but no, I don't think we're going to see anything groundbreaking from this.
But you believe fundamentally that what's being reported is a physical phenomenon, i.e. something in the sky that's performing physics-denying aerobatics. You think that's an actual, real representation of the reality?
I do. These videos are taken by the Navy. The Navy's come forward and said, yes, they've claimed the videos. You've got craft that's traveling at a speed, they're determining between 40 and 80,000 miles an hour that aren't breaking any sound barriers. I mean, come on now.
Well, to play devil's advocate again, okay, the question is, what's more likely, a craft doing something crazy like that, or a mistaken video, or a mistaken identification of something that appears like that, but is not in fact doing that? And I would say the latter is more likely.
Well, they also have data that links it to radar reports as well. Maybe they'll release that in these documents. Maybe we'll get to see some of that. But you'll see, I believe you're going to see a lot of government officials holding some type of hearings in the near future where it's going to be theorized that maybe this is coming from Russia or China. And until one of them comes forward and say, hey, that's not ours, that's what it's going to be blamed on.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens next week.
We'll see what happens. And we are trying to get an expert on in the next week or so. We possibly may be shifting one of our recording dates of this show. So we'll have more on that in the next couple of weeks. Okay, Ike, you've heard of the Somerton Man, right?
No.
No. Okay. Next case. This is coming to us from abc.net. It's a story out of Australia. The next case is something that's been more of somewhat of an international mystery for more than 70 years. It's the case of the Somerton Man. On December 1st, 1948, a man's body was found on Adelaide's Somerton Beach in South Australia. The identity of the individual and his cause of death have never been determined. The case has been called one of Australia's most profound mysteries. He's known as the Somerton Man, or Tamam Shud, named after a Persian phrase, tamam shud, meaning ended or finished, which was later printed on a scrap of paper found months later in a fob pocket on the man's trousers. Now, speculation surrounding the identity of victim, cause of his death, and the events leading up to it, well, they're out there. You can name a theory, they've got it. Some claim there are ties to the Cold War, since his body was found during the height of international tensions. Some conspiracy experts claim Tamam Shud name is a secret code, and the Somerton Man was a victim to possibly undetectable poison and the inability of authorities to ID the dead man. To make things even weirder, here's your phrase you love, Ike. A month after the body was found, a brown suitcase was discovered at the train station nearby. It was checked into a locker just days before the man's body was found. What was in the suitcase? Glad you asked. Slippers, underwear, trousers with sand in the cuffs, and a table knife fashioned into a sharp edge. After a worldwide investigation, the man's identity still remains a mystery until now, because Ike, last month, the body was exhumed by authorities in an attempt to collect some DNA from the dead body, of course, and try to find some relative. Somerton Man, it's been all over the news. I can't believe, you're an international world traveler. You have not heard of this.
No, actually, now that you mention it, no, I do recall it. This is one of the better stories about the washed up body and the people. So you said they collected the DNA. What did they find out?
Well, they haven't yet. They've just exhumed the body. It was exhumed last month. They're still trying to collect some DNA, and it is, if I did a search the other day to see if there's any latest updates, and there was not. So they're trying to determine who this person was, what happened to him, and if there are some relatives out there who could maybe ID the man.
Well, it is. I mean, this gets into one of my favorite subjects, which is faking my own death. And I often wonder about, you could have a variety of reasons to be like, all right, I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to put my shirt on that dude who's already dead and then throw him off a boat and then no one's going to bother me again. I mean, it could be something like that.
Could very well be, just a very strange situation. I think finding the suitcase was really what opened this up to all types of weird theories. Otherwise, it would have just been a dead guy on a beach. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for now, isn't it?
That is it for this show. You want to remind folks about our presence in social media?
Dear folks, allow me to remind you of our presence on social media. It's Facebook and Twitter and YouTube within a couple of days. It's the Road Beyond podcast. You ought to be able to find us wherever finer podcasts are sold.
And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notifications when we post these new shows. All right, Ike, we're going to wrap it up. Take care out there in Tennessee.
I'll fake my own death.
All right. We'll see if Ike joins us next week. Thank you for being on the Road Beyond. I'm Todd Duplantis. We'll see you next time.